Thank you for coming out this afternoon. Good afternoon, and thank you all for coming out this afternoon. As you can see, I'm joined by Office of Juvenile Justice Deputy Secretary Bill Summers and Louisiana Department of Public Safety and Corrections Secretary Jimmy LeBlanc. They'll speak to you once I'm done, and then I'll come back up and we'll take your questions. We want to give you an update on the situation at the Bridge City Center for Youth and the plan that we've developed to address those issues. I do want to also thank Senator Connick and Representative Green for being here today and for meeting with me. First of all, let me start with stating the obvious. What happened this past weekend at Bridge City was completely unacceptable. The escape, the theft, the shooting, all of it. It puts the youth, the staff, and the surrounding community at risk. And that's why we are taking additional action there. These incidents simply cannot and will not continue. An investigation has been opened, and an initial review shows that there were numerous deficiencies and failures that contributed to those 6 juveniles being able to escape this weekend. And that includes a violation of the approved plan of action for the additional security that we had made available to the facility on June 17th, just a month ago. As a result, 3 individuals, staff at OJJ, have been placed on administrative leave pending further investigation. And as you know, while that investigation plays out, we'll be somewhat limited in what we can say about it. I will tell you that it is obvious to me that we had a leadership failure at Bridge City that compounded some of the other challenges that we've had there and that we've known about and have been seeking to address. And the additional security that we placed at Bridge City last month, as I think you're all aware, it only helps if the security plan is actually followed and those security personnel are properly utilized, and that was not the case. We do know, and I had been getting reports over the past month, that the additional security, when they were properly utilized, actually improved the basic function of Bridge City and had made it more conducive for the treatment and education of those juveniles there. And obviously their safety and their rehabilitation is a priority for us. These issues are compounded by poor condition of the center that is decades old, and as you all know, wasn't built to be a secure care facility of any kind. And I've heard the concerns, the complaints of community leaders, legislators, and others. With all that we know and all that has happened, it is clear to me that we cannot continue to operate Bridge City as we have. But it is also obvious, given the number of juveniles in our system and the available space, closing Bridge City is not currently an option. We have developed both a short-term and a long-term plan to address these issues. In the short term, we will continue with increased security provided in conjunction with the Department of Corrections, but also additional security with Louisiana State Police. And I think you're going to hear Deputy Secretary Summers talk about work that he's done to contract with the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office for additional security outside the facility and so forth. So that will continue along with those Department of Corrections personnel who will be inside in additional numbers to continue to be there, but also we will have additional coordination and training and communication with those Department of Corrections personnel. In addition, to address the leadership issue that I mentioned a while ago, we will have an OJJ senior staff member at Bridge City at all times. and this will ensure that our plans and protocols are followed without exception. And make no mistake about it, OJJ will be in charge of the facility. Now, while we're not going to close Bridge City, we are working to reduce significantly the number of juveniles that will be placed there. As early next month and as soon as possible, we will temporarily move some, but not all of those youth, to a separate and isolated location at the Louisiana State Penitentiary. Now, to be clear, they will not, under any circumstances, have contact with adult inmates. This structure is completely separate and apart from the camps that house the adult inmates. It is, in fact, attached to the administration building. It is a secure, independent housing unit near the front of the prison, which was once used as a reception center, and most recently, I think until about a month ago, it housed female inmates who had been displaced from the floods of 2016 when LCIW inmates had to relocate. At the same time, crews are renovating a secure section of our facility at Jetson, apart from the female section of that prison, which continues to house those female inmates who have been displaced from LCIW because of the floods that I just mentioned. As part of the renovation at Jetson, workers are installing a 12-foot fence around the building. In addition, security cameras and air conditioning are also being installed. While they are temporarily housed in this separate building at the Louisiana State Penitentiary and thereafter at Jetson, all juveniles will remain in the care and custody of OJJ. They will not have contact with adult inmates and will continue to receive all of the services they currently receive through OJJ, including education. Now, understand that this is not the perfect or the ideal plan, and that some will have questions, and I suspect you will, and we'll get to those shortly. But I do believe that the situation demands an immediate response. And these are the best options we currently have to ensure the safety of the youth, the staff, and the community. Now, more permanent, longer-term solutions are also being developed. And there's been no shortage of activity within OJJ. Construction of a new juvenile housing at the Swanson facility in Monroe is underway. It'll be in operation, we believe, by the spring of '23. The new behavioral unit at Cypress, located at Swanson and Monroe, is also being renovated to resume individualized behavioral treatment of detained juveniles. Opportunities for an additional facility or two around the state are being evaluated, as well as refurbishing existing facilities for the intake, assessment, and appropriate placement of incoming juveniles. So this is obviously a complex issue, and while those long-term solutions won't happen overnight, we are taking immediate and short-term and longer-term actions so that we can improve the situation until we can get to that permanent solution. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Bill Summers. He will be followed by Jimmy LeBlanc, and then I will come back and we will take a few questions.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Governor, for your leadership and your assistance in putting this plan together, assistance. I'd like to thank Department of Corrections Secretary Jimmy LeBlanc and State Police Colonel Lamar Davis, as well as Sheriff LaPinto from Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office, for their partnership in addressing staffing shortage and housing for the youth at Bridge City. Like everybody said here and in the community, I'm very upset about what happened this weekend. It should not have happened, and we're taking the appropriate steps to make certain that does not happen again. As the Governor said, this is an urgent situation and it demands a serious and urgent response. We've gone over every option and come up with what we believe is the best plan that we can at this time to greatly improve security for the youth, staff, and the community. It's important for everybody to understand that as we transition youth from the Bridge City relocation to a separate building on the grounds of the Louisiana State Penitentiary, they will remain under the authority of the Office of Juvenile Justice. And I want to reiterate what I just said. They will remain under the authority of the Office of Juvenile Justice. The youth who are relocated will continue with their therapy, their substance abuse, their education, and any other type of programming that we have. We will continue to provide what we think is quality care inside our secure facilities. I understand that hearing that we'll be moving juveniles to an adult facility is concerning and not what anybody wants to hear. We understand that. But we will be using a tiered system to relocate some of these youth, which means that only the most troubled youth will be moved to the state penitentiary, not all of the youth. We have a successful program at BCCY, and those are for that are incarcerated for sex offenders. It's called JUMP. That stands for Juveniles Understanding Managing Problematic Behavior. And currently that's approximately half of the youth at Bridge City. It's about 24 youth. And keep in mind, that's a fluid number and is subject to change. It's the other half that we're looking to relocate. They have a well-established relationship in the JUMP program with their therapists and counselors, and they're not the ones that are involved in these recent disturbances. We believe that is in the best interest that their care not be disrupted as we temporarily relocate the other youth. The majority of the juveniles in our secure care are not causing the problems. It is a small number, but they are causing tremendous chaos. Once we're able to renovate the Jetson Correctional Center, we'll transfer the youth to that location where they will be housed until a more permanent solutions are put in place. We're working on the timeline that the governor's provided. We have a total of about 5 secure care facilities, and there are issues that need to be addressed in every one of them. This gives us an opportunity to repair some of those issues that we have. I'm grateful for the governor and all the agencies that are helping in this coordinated effort to improve the lives of the juveniles and staff and the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill, Governor. For those of you that don't know me, Jimmy LeBlanc, Secretary of Corrections. We are here today to work in partnership with the Office of Juvenile Services. There will be some youth briefly housed, as already mentioned, at our facilities, but I want to be clear, as has already been made, when it comes to these youth, OJJ is completely in charge. Our role at Corrections is to help with the transition time by providing a facility and additional security. This is a temporary arrangement with OJJ, as we work to address the issues at these facilities to make them safer and more secure for the youth, for the public, and for the staff. We have developed just to mention, we have developed a training module for our staff before they assume duty on any of these facilities. While we are here temporarily, we will house temporarily juveniles at the old reception center at Louisiana State Penitentiary. These youth will not interact with adult inmates at all, period. In this same housing area, we've had, as the governor mentioned, we've had approximately 30 females that were housed there since 2016. For approximately 6 years, they've since been transferred back to Jetson with the opening of a temporary facility there, and without incident in 6 years. They would be kept separate from the adults in separate buildings at the penitentiary and later transferred to Jetson, as has been mentioned. Corrections staff will be trained, follow protocols established by the Office of Juvenile Justice. We will continue to provide additional security support to OJJ at Bridge City as it is needed. We all believe this is in the best temporary solution for a very complex and challenging situation at Bridge City. And we are all hopeful that making these improvements over the coming months will ease these issues and keep our communities safe. I believe that working together and letting OJJ lead the way with how these youth are taken care of, we can safely house these young people temporarily. Thank you, and I will turn it back over to the governor.
Thank you, Jimmy and Bill. And at this point, we will take questions. Yes, sir.
Governor, what do you say to people who have lost confidence in OJJ's ability to manage Bridge City, and what do you propose bringing the population down to at this point?
Well, I think we just addressed those questions, but I'll hit them again. And I can't tell you exactly what the population will be brought down to. Those who are in the jump program, as Deputy Secretary Summers mentioned, will stay at Bridge City. Currently, that's about half of the youth. We have basically, I should say, right at 50, and half are in the jump program, half are not. And Bridge City going forward would continue to house those youth who are in the jump program. And the rest will be relocated as soon as we can implement the steps that we just talked through. And I will reiterate that we're doing this because those individuals who are in that jump program have not contributed to any of the incidents that we've experienced at Bridge City recently in terms of escapes and other issues. And I will tell you that I do have confidence in OJJ to continue to have those youth at Bridge City. I also have confidence that between now and when the other youth are relocated from that facility, that because of the leadership that will be there, the senior leadership, in addition to the additional security and the new protocols, that Bridge City will function effectively and with the requisite security, all while we continue to provide the treatment, the education, and so forth for the youth. But obviously, Bridge City is not an ideal situation for us, far from it. So the sooner we can reduce that number of youth who are at Bridge City, I think the better, which is why we're taking this short-term solution that we just mentioned with respect to that old reception center. State Police. Yes.
This question is for Secretary Bill Summers. When we spoke in February of 2022, we had asked you, because there had been 50 escapes from secure facilities statewide from 2020 to 2021. And you said, I am responsible, I'm 100% responsible for this. You said you're putting all sorts of security measures in place. This was before 17 juveniles and troubled teens had escaped from Bridge City. How would you rate your performance? How would you grade it?
How would I rate my performance? Not very good. It's my responsibility to keep these kids inside the fence line.
What do you think you could have done differently?
Well, I think that when you put a plan in place, or you ask folks to do, you're only as good as the people that work for you. And I think there was some deviation from established protocol.
Are you confident that that deviation isn't going to happen again? Like, what measures have been put in place so that it doesn't happen again?
I'm confident that won't happen again, Mr. Nakamoto.
Yes.
How many additional personnel were placed at the center following this incident? And you said there were lapses in the established protocol. Were they not present on Sunday morning?
No. And I mentioned that we are not going to get too deep into the investigation that is just started, that is ongoing. What I said was that the additional security was present. It wasn't properly utilized because of a deviation by the most senior leadership at Bridge City when the incident occurred. And that is the most egregious, I think, shortcoming that we've identified thus far, is because there were additional resources there, both inside and outside the perimeter. And it was a deviation from the protocols that had been established. That is that failure in leadership that I mentioned at the facility. But they were present. And in terms of the number of additional people. If Secretary Summers, I don't know exactly. On the number of additional people that were
DOC? Yeah. Well, we have DOC personnel in each of our facilities at this point. We have 10 at nighttime and 8 in the day.
The additional, beyond that, the additional resources that we brought to bear about a month ago involved state police officers who would rove outside, and then I think a contract with the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office for additional outside security as well. So I wanted you to know that too was brought to bear. Yes, ma'am.
I know you mentioned that it's still an ongoing investigation, but in terms of the escapee who shot the 59-year-old man, I'm sure he's one of the troubled who will be transferred. What happens in the event that we have, more people who are breaking out? Will they also be transferred? Is it an ongoing transition?
Well, that individual is already at the Orleans Parish Juvenile Detention Facility, so he's not at Bridge City. And so when you say ongoing transfers, we are going to make the transfers of the non-jump youth personnel, youth who are at Bridge City, as soon as we are able to do it. From that point forward, we won't be sending non-jump youth to Bridge City, period. So that, I think I answered your question. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
How long have you been working on this long-term, short-term solution? And we did speak to the Baker Police Chief. He said he just now heard about bringing some youth to Justin. Are they prepared? Have you been in communication with them?
Well, we've actually started piecing together a solution about a month ago when we decided to bring additional security to Bridge City because of the incidents that we've been experiencing, I should say. We looked and said, well, what can we do differently going forward? And we identified then the space at Jetson here in East Baton Rouge Parish, which was built to be a juvenile facility, secure care facility, by the way. Looked at the space that could house the individuals that we would need to relocate from Bridge City. That space is in fact there. It is separate and apart from the portion of that facility that is occupied by the adult female inmates who are still displaced from LCIW. And so we started then looking at that space and working towards making sure that it would be renovated to the point where we could successfully relocate the young people there. And we had some preliminary conversations with some legislators and others. And I want to address something about this. Now, we're talking about 25 youth who would be relocated to Jetson to what is the most secure portion of Jetson. When it previously housed youth when it was previously used as a secure care facility for youth, there were times when there were 700 youth there, male and female, occupying the entire campus. That will obviously not be the case. And if the numbers always change slightly because some kids leave the program, some other kids come into the program. But if we did today what we're talking about 25 youth. And so I believe when the police chief and others in the Baker area understand exactly what the plan is and how we're going to execute it, that will go a very long way to, I think, alleviating much of the concern that I've heard, because I suspect that they're picturing in their mind problems that were there years ago when there were 700 youth on the entire facility. That will not be the case. We're talking something in the neighborhood of 25. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Governor. I just want to be clear, first of all, on numbers. So about 50 in the jump program are staying at Bridge City, and about 25
No.
are
They're
going
about,
to
they're about 50
education.
at Bridge City, period. Half are in the jump program, half are not. The half that are in the jump, and so we can't know what that number is going to be on the day when we affect the transfers. If it were happening today, 25 would stay, 25 would leave. And those numbers change a little bit over time, but
I understand.
that's the range of what we're talking about.
Okay, so then half, 25, will go to Angola in the separate facility, and then they'll be moved when Jetson is renovated to there, and violent offenders won't go back to Bridge City.
That is correct.
Okay, now,
And that gets us to the plan that we've announced today. But I've also announced that is still not the optimal solution, and so we are going to be moving forward with a plan to construct one or more new facilities that are modern, that are small, that are secure, and that can be properly administered by a reasonable number of people. And that is very much unlike the situation at Bridge City. If you go out there today with that sprawling campus. And we had known that we were moving in this direction, which is why when I submitted a capital outlay budget to the legislature for this last session, it included funding both in P1, the immediate priority, and priority 5. It totals over $70 million. And so we have the funding, we just have to make the selection on where that's going to go. And just for, and there's been some inflation since then, but we have a 72-bed facility being constructed right now in Monroe at Swanson, and I think the price of that facility was right at $26 million. So we have confidence we have the funding necessary to move forward with that long-term solution that we talked about, that I spoke about, but I'm not yet ready to announce exactly where that's going to go. But what we know is we have to do some things in the immediate and short term before we can get there.
yes, sir, I understand the short-term and the long-term program, but you said for the short term, as soon as you could implement it, when you're able. So in the meantime, is a fencing company being called to shore up fences, or what's going to be done? I mean, the neighbors described deplorable conditions, and what's going to be done now? And the reason I'm asking is because the juvenile who allegedly shot the 59-year-old on Sunday, it's the second time he escaped. He had escaped last month as well. So why all of a sudden now, after all these, events, keep reoccurring?
Well, because we took additional steps a month ago, as I've outlined. Clearly, they weren't enough. And the additional resources, I am convinced that we had there were sufficient had they been properly utilized. They weren't. And that's the leadership failure that I have spoken of several times now. And I will tell you that between now and when those transfers are made, and quite frankly thereafter, you are going to see improvements at that facility. You're also going to see us operate a much smaller portion of it so that it can be more effectively, I guess, secured. And with the use of not just fencing, but surveillance systems and then the additional personnel.
So
I think continue.
tonight, what's going to happen?
Well, first of all, as I mentioned, we will have senior leadership, and this, by the way, has already started. But again, tonight and going forward, you will have senior leadership on the property, in addition to the additional resources and the efforts to improve the facility. Because the facility needs to be improved, even if today we had been able to move out the 25 or so. We still have changes that we need to make there.
Thank you, Governor.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I actually have a question for the second?
If I may, real quickly, Governor, the other thing on the fencing, I just want to mention, I have a crew on the ground there. It's about 100 yards of fencing that needs attention, and we're giving it attention, and I think tomorrow we'll be working. Okay, so it won't be tonight, but it'll be tomorrow. So just, I know you're concerned about the fencing, and I understand that.
Thank you.
Secretary, so at Louisiana State Penitentiary, I mean, inmates provide a lot of the labor, so they do the custodian work, they make the food, they do maintenance, the expenses, they do all that stuff, and I'm curious about how you're gonna ensure that how are you gonna take care of this building that the young people are in, or what, youths, I think that word, but youths, like, who's gonna clean it, who's gonna do those things if you're keeping inmates away from them? And I'm asking because last year, during Hurricane Ida, when the detention center in Orleans evacuated to Elaine Hunt, the attorneys for those children and their parents said that they, you know, and I know you disagree, but said that they did have contact or at least see inmates. They said that inmates were cleaning that area of the prison. They said that they were maybe bringing food. So, like, how do you even clean the facility if you're not using inmates to do that? Like,
Well, let me first address that with the facility at Hunt is much different than the facility at the penitentiary. It's not, they won't, sight and sound, it's not going to happen. Where at the penitentiary, to get to that unit, you had to take a walk where you could see through that walk and see the kids or see adults if they had to use that walk for any emergency or whatever it might take place. As far as the cleaning and stuff, that, you know, his staff, maintenance staff, same thing they do at the other facilities. That it's going to be the personnel that have to do that have to take up the slack there.
I want to get focused on cleaning, but actually, the penitentiary is pretty isolated. Are you going to have people driving over from, like, Bunkie?
No, yeah, maintenance staff. I mean, we are making arrangements for housing at our bachelor quarters to do some things there with current staff at Bridge City. If they want to move up to the penitentiary, we're going to try to accommodate that the best we can. And if our staff have to work it and help out, we'll do that.
Okay. And where are they being housed? They're not going to Camp J. What part of it?
It's right at the front gate. It's attached, as the governor mentioned, it's attached to the administration building, right in the front of the prison, right to the right. When you go through the front gate, it's on the right.
Governor, what can you say about notification of the people who live in this neighborhood? A lot of people say they're supposed to get text alerts, they're not getting them, and there are a lot of questions about when it happens, the media is not even notified, so you have a dangerous 17-year-old who has committed violent crimes before out on the streets, and no one knows who this individual is. The public isn't able to try and help track him down because there doesn't seem to be a good notification system to the media or the people who live in Bridge City.
Okay, so you're talking about back at Bridge City.
Yes, sir.
And when you started asking the question, I thought you were talking about what we're doing now. Secretary Summers will come and roll through what those protocols are. Deputy Secretary.
To answer that, we have a code red system. And the code red, when we do have an incident, when somebody goes over the fence, is that we have a code red system, and it sends out an alert to every number that we have in the database in a 2-mile radius, and then we can send it out more if we haven't caught up with the individual yet. We can send it out further. And I believe it works pretty well. We've been to some meetings down in the Bridge City community, and we've had some people that said they weren't getting alerts. And we've asked them, you know, say, give us a call, and we'll make sure that we're making, you know, a call to you if we have an incident. That system has been going on for a long time, and it's a system that works. And there are some, you know, like anything else, there's some hiccups that people don't get notified somehow, some way, but that's just in the system. Talking about your second part of your question
How
was,
do they get into the system, sir? Since most of the people we talk to in the neighborhood say they never get an alert. What does an individual in Bridge City need to do to get on that system?
just call the office. You know, it's like the old system in my old office in Calcasieu.
and we get them signed up in a hurry.
And then the second part of the question is, why isn't the media notified when these jailbreaks occur? And why can't we get the name of some of these individuals, especially if they're a violent 17-year-old who I believe is not shielded by state secrecy laws, so that individuals who may know this individual or may have been impacted by their previous crimes is notified?
That's a great question. By law, and I can't give you the verse right now, but by law, we can't release. Law enforcement can. And so we've ramped up our efforts with the Louisiana State Police when we have these incidents, and signed some documents with Colonel Davis's team to release names and pictures when incidents like this happen. But we can't release, sir.
State Police says it's an OJJ matter when we call them for this information.
Sir, that's right. And it is, and we've partnered with them to fix this.
So who is responsible for notifying the public as to who broke out of?
That would be law enforcement, sir.
So you're saying state police and not OJJ?
I'm saying the law enforcement agency, when we send it out, whatever law enforcement agency, because we partner with the state police, but it could be, of Oils, or it could be up in Monroe, or wherever we have an incident, and when we authorize them to release, they release.
So you have to authorize them to release.
And that would be Jefferson Parish in this case, is what you're saying?
Yes,
That would release this in this case?
yes.
Among the 6 juveniles who escaped this weekend, what were they for crimes?
We're not going to get into specifics of their crimes, sir, because they are juveniles.
And are there newspaper previously reported that guards who are augmented inside, who are authorized to carry stun guns, pepper spray, and employ use of force tactics, generally referred to as kills? Have any of those tactics been used since the guards were?
We've had a few incidents throughout the state of spray being utilized. We've also had an incident with a taser.
And are any juveniles under OJJ custody being held out of state currently?
Not at this time.
Governor, and we will, to get back to a previous question, we will get back with all the communities where we operate, because we've done this before. But I think what we have to do is we have to keep reiterating what that code red system is and how they get their phone numbers into that system, and that when they change phone numbers or when people move in or whatever, that they be given the information again. And we will make sure that happens. Yes, Sam.
Governor Jeff Landry said today he wants the bond commission to withhold funding from New Orleans until they agree to enforce the abortion ban. What do you make of that, and what do you make of the New Orleans officials saying they're not going to enforce the state's abortion ban?
Well, look, we all, as public officials, we raise the right hand and take an oath. And so we need to make sure that we're following the oath that we take and that we commit to. And that means enforcing the law. I do, however, believe that the Attorney General's, and I received a copy of the letter, I think his effort is very misguided for a number of reasons. One of which, it seems to me a little premature, because the temporary restraining order was extended today by Judge Johnson here in the 19th Judicial District. But beyond that, the idea that you seek to punish all the people living in a certain area because you are at odds with some of their elected officials, that's not a reasonable approach. Secondly, you're not just punishing those people. The bond commission meeting at issue will take up a reauthorization of funding for projects that are already under construction. And it's necessary to pay bills that have already been incurred and to complete projects that are underway. And so if you don't approve those projects anywhere, New Orleans or anywhere, who you're really punishing are the business people and their workers and their families more than anybody else, but that whole approach seems very misguided to me. Secondly, the way the law works is we will never get to the priority 2 funding in the capital construction program until we've handled all the priority 1. And so it's only priority 1 that they're going to take up at the next bond commission meeting. But if you don't handle the Orleans portion of that, then you're not going to get to the priority 2 funding, which should be available in the current fiscal year for projects all over the state. And so this is not even targeted at New Orleans. The very logical extension of this is you would just cause the program to stop as it relates to priority 2, which is very significant amount of funding, very important projects, and those projects are all over the state. So I received the letter. I would hope that the Attorney General will back away from that approach, and whether he does or not, it would be my hope and expectation that the Bond Commission would not go along for the reasons that I just mentioned. But thank you all for coming out to cover the press conference. Obviously, this is a very serious situation at OJJ and Bridge City, and I appreciate your efforts to keep people informed. And we will continue to take whatever actions are necessary to make sure that these facilities are secure so that the youth are safe, staff is safe, communities are safe. And if we have any updates to the plan that we just laid out for you, and when we know what that long-term plan looks like, rest assured we're going to get back to you to make sure that you are aware of it. Thank you very much.
Just quickly, Governor, do y'all have an update on the condition of the 59-year-old who was shot by any chance? So y'all talked to the person? Okay.
Thank you.